They were closer than father and son. For 6 years they shared everything, their deepest ideas, their darkest secrets, their boldest dreams for understanding the human mind. Sigmund Freud called Carl Jung his crown prince, his successor, the future of psychoanalysis. Brothers in mind. Then one day, it all shattered. A single disagreement. A clash of visions so violent it split psychology in two and created wounds that never healed. What could possibly destroy such a bond? What idea was so dangerous that it turned intellectual soulmates into bitter enemies? The answer lies buried in letters they tried to destroy. Today, we excavate the most explosive friendship in the history of science. Two titans, two visions of the human soul, and a war that still divides psychology today. This is the story they didn't want you to know. Fateful meeting. Vienna, 1907. A young Swiss psychiatrist travels to meet the most famous mind doctor in the world. Carl Jung, just 31 years old, had already made a name for himself with his word association experiments. But he was searching for something more, a framework to understand the deepest layers of the human psyche. Sigmund Freud, 50 years old and hungry for disciples, saw in Jung everything he needed. Here was a brilliant young mind, a non-Jewish voice to carry psychoanalysis beyond the Viennese Jewish intellectual circles, a successor. Their first meeting lasted 13 hours. We talked and talked, almost without pause. 13 hours of pure intellectual connection. They discussed dreams, sexuality, the unconscious mind. Freud was captivated. Jung was in awe. Neither knew they were lighting a fuse that would eventually explode. In those 13 hours, two visions of the human soul began to intertwine, visions that would one day tear each other apart. But first, they would change the world together. The Crown Prince. Freud didn't just accept Jung, he crowned him. Within months, Jung became the first president of the International Psychoanalytic Association. Freud wrote to him constantly, sometimes multiple letters per day. Father and son, the older man poured out his heart, his theories, his hopes. He called Jung his son and heir. For Jung, this was intoxicating. Imagine being chosen by the most revolutionary thinker in psychology. Imagine having the keys to the kingdom handed to you. But even in those golden years, cracks were forming. Jung had ideas of his own, ideas about mythology, spirituality, and the collective human experience that didn't fit Freud's framework. When Jung tried to share them, Freud would grow cold, dismissive. Please don't deviate from the sexual theory. We must make a dogma of it. A dogma. The word hung in the air between them. Jung believed in exploration. Freud demanded obedience. The Crown Prince was beginning to feel like a prisoner. Sexual obsession. Here is where the fault line ran deepest. For Freud, everything, every dream, every neurosis, every human behavior traced back to sex. Repressed sexual desires were the engine of the unconscious mind. The Oedipus complex, penis envy, childhood sexuality. Sex. This was the foundation of psychoanalysis, and Freud would not budge. Jung saw it differently. Yes, sexuality mattered, but reducing the entire human psyche to sexual impulses, that felt like wearing blinders in a vast, mysterious landscape. What about spiritual longings? What about the drive for meaning? What about the strange symbols that appeared across all human cultures? Jung watched his patients and saw something Freud refused to see. They weren't just struggling with repressed desires. They were struggling with questions of purpose, of connection to something greater than themselves, beyond the body. When Jung raised these concerns, Freud's response was devastating. He accused Jung of being unscientific, of retreating into mysticism. The message was clear. Agree with me or you're against me. The fainting spell. The tension between them manifested in the strangest ways. Twice, Freud fainted in Jung's presence. The first time, in 1909, they were discussing mummified corpses found in peat bogs. Jung was fascinated by death and rebirth symbolism. Freud suddenly collapsed. Something in Jung's words struck too close. The second fainting episode came in 1912. During a heated argument about ancient Egyptian pharaohs and death wishes. Freud later admitted he believed Jung harbored unconscious death wishes toward him. that the younger man secretly wanted to kill the father figure. Think about that. The founder of psychoanalysis, the man who taught the world to analyze hidden motives, became convinced his protege wanted him dead. Was Freud projecting his own fears? Was Jung really that threatening? I was sick and tired of being treated like a son. The father-son dynamic that had once been beautiful was now suffocating them both. And the worst was yet to come. Collective mind. Jung's heresy had a name, the collective unconscious. While Freud believed the unconscious was personal, filled with your repressed memories and desires, Jung saw something much bigger. He noticed that his patients dreamed of symbols they'd never encountered in their personal lives. Dragons, wise old men, the Great Mother, rebirth imagery. These same symbols appeared in myths from cultures that had no contact with each other. Ancient Greeks, African tribes, Chinese traditions, Native Americans, all telling similar stories, all dreaming similar dreams. Jung proposed that beneath our personal unconscious lies a deeper layer inherited from all of humanity. Not memories, but patterns. Archetypes, he called them. Ancient patterns within. The shadow, the anima, the self. These weren't just psychological concepts. They were universal templates written into our very being. For Freud, this was too much. It sounded like religion, like mysticism, like everything he'd fought to separate psychology from. But for Jung, it was the key to understanding why humans across all time and place struggled with the same fundamental questions. The bitter letters. By 1912, their correspondence had become a battlefield. What once flowed with warmth and intellectual excitement now dripped with accusations and wounded pride. Freud accused Jung of ambition, of wanting to destroy psychoanalysis. Jung accused Freud of treating everyone as patients, analyzing their motives instead of engaging with their ideas. Your technique of treating your pupils like patients is a blunder. You produce either slavish sons or impudent puppies. The language grew harsher. The wounds went deeper. Both men were brilliant analyzers of the human psyche, yet neither could see what was happening between them. They were acting out the very dynamics they studied, father and son, power and rebellion. Love turned to hatred. Their insight became blindness. In January 1913, Freud wrote a cold, formal letter proposing they abandon their personal relationship while maintaining a professional one. Friendship over, Jung agreed. The break was complete. 7 years of the most intense intellectual partnership in psychology ended with polite formality and suppressed rage. Descent to madness. The break with Freud shattered Jung. Without warning, he began experiencing visions, hallucinations, overwhelming surges from his unconscious. Madness. He saw Europe flooded with blood, a vision that came true with World War I. He heard voices. He encountered figures from mythology in his waking life. For 6 years, from 1913 to 1919, Jung teetered on the edge of insanity. Most people would have crumbled. But Jung did something extraordinary. He deliberately descended into his own chaos. Every night, he would sit in his study and induce visions. He would talk to the figures that appeared. He would write down everything in what he called his Red Book, a massive, illustrated manuscript filled with images that looked like medieval illumination and words that read like ancient scripture. To the extent that I managed to translate the emotions into images, I was inwardly calmed and reassured. From this confrontation with madness came his greatest discoveries. The shadow, active imagination, the process of individuation. Through darkness light, Jung transformed his breakdown into breakthrough. Legacy divided. Their war never ended. For the rest of their lives, Freud and Jung spoke of each other with barely concealed contempt. Freud built his empire, psychoanalytic institutes, a loyal following, theories that would shape 20th century culture. Jung built his analytical psychology, typology that would become the basis for personality tests used by millions, concepts like introversion and extroversion that entered everyday language. Both changed how humanity understands itself. Both were right about some things and wrong about others. But here's what matters for you. Their conflict wasn't just about theory. It was about the deepest question in psychology. What are we really? Are we primarily driven by primal urges, sexual and aggressive, that we must civilize, desire or meaning? Or are we on a journey toward wholeness, integrating all parts of ourselves into something greater? Freud saw a beast that needed taming. Jung saw a seed that wanted to grow. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Perhaps the truth includes both visions. Perhaps we are creatures of desire and meaning, shadow and light, beast and becoming. Two giants met in Vienna over a century ago. They dreamed of mapping the human soul together. Instead, their collision fractured psychology into schools that still debate today. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Freud gave us the courage to look at our darkest desires. Jung gave us the hope that we could transcend them. Their friendship, beautiful and doomed, produced ideas that have touched every therapist's office, every self-help book, every conversation about the mind. Know your depths. What can you take from their tragedy? Perhaps this: the people who challenge us most deeply are often showing us parts of ourselves we refuse to see. Freud and Jung were mirrors for each other, and they couldn't bear the reflection. But you can. You can hold both truths. You can acknowledge your shadows and reach for the light. You can be honest about desire and still search for meaning. The wisdom of both titans is yours now. The question is, what will you do with it? If this unlocked something in you, subscribe for more wisdom from the vault.